Hi everybody, I just want to start by saying that I am happy to be talking to you. Even though that it is not ideal, this is better than nothing for me. I would much rather be with you than stuck at home, but unfortunately that's not my decision. I just wanted to let you know a few things. First of all, it is Sunday night and I have still yet to see your EOC results for those of you who took it. I have no idea what's going on with Desi right now, but they should have been posted by no later than last Thursday, and they're not posted yet. So as soon as I get them, you will get them. You haven't not heard because I'm not there. It's because they're not available. Once they are available, I will make sure that I get those out to you. So we'll have to just wait and see how much longer it's going to take. I want to let you know what the rest of your school year is going to look like. We are going to do lessons 76 through 80 this week. Excuse me. And next week we will do 2 reviews, and then you will take a test over these 5 lessons and potentially anything that we've covered so far. So we're going to do 2 reviews, so you can do one, have it graded, see the things that you missed, and then make sure that we are focusing on those types of things on the second review. Make sure that we're getting them right. And then that's going to be my way of helping you out as best I can. And then you'll take your test. After that, we will be done with your textbook, and I will have other assignments for you throughout the rest of the school year. So that's what you can look forward to. I'm sure you're looking forward to your math homework. What we're doing today and the rest of the week is I will lecture to you on the smartboard, and if you need it to be paused so you can write something down or something along those lines, just raise your hand. I'm sure that the sub will be happy to do that for you. And please follow along as we're going through this. If I ask you to put it in your calculator, write it down, whatever, please make sure you're doing those things as if I were in the room with you. You'll have homework tonight, which will be graded tomorrow and due tomorrow. So that is basically all that I have for you. So what we're going to talk about today is lesson 76, finding polynomial roots. We've already kind of talked about this a little bit. The roots are where the function hits the x-axis. Okay, so polynomial roots are the solutions of a polynomial equation. These roots are the zeros of the related polynomial function, which are the x-intercepts of the graph of the function. So, example 1 says find the roots. This one is one that you should know how to do without me explaining anything to you. The roots are going to be where each of these is set equal to 0. So if I have 2x, that is supposed to be x equals 0. Then x minus 5 equal to 0, and 2x minus 3 equal to 0. To get x by itself here, divide by 2. So I would just get that x is equal to 0. Here I would add 5 to both sides. So I would get x is equal to 5. And here I would add 3. And then divide by 2. So that would get me x equals 3/2. So that means my roots are 0, 5, and 3 over 2. So that's my final answer for example 1. On example 2, this one is a little bit trickier because we don't have it already factored for us like we did in the last one. So what we can see here, first of all, I can go ahead and factor something out of each of these because I have an x in every term, and I have a 2 that I could take out of every one. So if I do that, I have 2x, and that leaves me with 3x squared because I'm dividing, okay? 10x squared divided by 2x is 5x, and 4x divided by 2x is 2, okay? Now that we're here, okay, we can go ahead and factor this, I hope. And the way that we're going to do that is by using your quadratic equation. Okay, and 2x is, I didn't mean to draw a line to that, 2x is already pulled out, so we just have to worry about this part, which is why we can use the quadratic equation, because this is quadratic, it's squared. So we're not going to worry about the 2x part of it, we're just worried about this part of it, okay, for right now. So remember that your quadratic equation is in the form of the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, we have a, b, and c. So I have the opposite of b, which is 5, plus or minus square root of 5 being squared minus 4. Instead of a, I'm going to put 3. Instead of c, I'm going to put 2. And that's all over 2 times a, which is 3. Okay? So then all I have to do is simplify. So I have negative 5 plus or minus square root of 25 minus 4 times 3 is 12 times 2 is 24 all over 6. This gives me negative 5 plus or minus 1, because it's going to be square root of 1, which is just 1, over 6. So my roots excuse me, are going to be where 2x is equal to 0, which is just going to be x equals 0. And then these two, which is going to be negative 5 plus 1 over 6 and negative 5 minus 1 over 6. So this one gives me negative 4 over 6, which is a negative 2/3. And this one gives me negative 6 over 6, which is negative 1. Okay, so my roots are x is equal to 0, negative 2/3, and negative 1. That's my final answer. On this one, find the real roots. Same kind of situation. We're going to start similarly to the last one. I can see that I can factor an x out of each of those, so I'm going to do that. So I have x, and that leaves me with x to the third minus 3x squared plus 2x minus 6. Now, the difference with this one is that I'm not dealing with a quadratic anymore. I'm dealing with a cube. So what I want you to do is I want you to graph this part of the function, okay, in your y equals on your calculator, and then I want you to find where it hits the x-axis. So I'm going to pause here for a minute so that you can get this punched in and find where it hits the x-axis. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so your graph should look something like this in your calculator, and you should see that it hits the x-axis at x equals 3, right? And because it does that, that means that we can divide the rest of this by x minus 3. So then we're going to divide it into our original here. So what I'm going to do, x goes into this, takes x squared, so I have x to the third. This gives me negative 3x squared, okay? But I'm subtracting all of this, remember? So that means that those basically just cancel out, okay? And so 0, it would go 0 plus 0x, okay? Which gives me zeros for that too. Okay, when I take 0 times x, it gives me 0 for my x squared, basically. And then this is going to give me a 0 on this one, too. So if I have, I'm going to bring down my plus 2x, and this gives me 0 there. So I have 2x for this to go into that, excuse me. On this, x times 2 is what's going to get me 2x. So I have 2x, and 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, which my negative 6 should drop down. Remember, once again, I am subtracting this, so distribute those negatives, which means that both of those cancel out, so I have 0. I don't need to show this one, which means that I have x squared plus 2. Okay, so for my final answer here, when I have it all factored, I have x, and then I have x minus 3, and then x squared plus 2. Okay, so my real roots for this one are just going to be 0, because if this is 0, then the whole thing is equal to 0, right? And then I have 3, and on this one, if I set that one, x squared plus 2 equal to 0, if I subtract 2 from both sides, I get x squared equals a negative 2, square root it, which gives me radical negative 2. This is not a real root, okay, because it would be imaginary, and it says find the real zeros, so that's why we don't include that one, okay. So we just have x equal to 0, and then we set x minus 3 equal to 0, so that's where we got that x equals 3. So our real roots are x equals 0 because this one, and x equals 3 because of this one. This one was not real, so we didn't include it. Alright, on example 3, A says to find the real roots of blah 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 blah, this nice long equation. This, whenever you're looking at this, you can see that these are being multiplied and these are being multiplied, right? I have something very similar in both of these that I can factor out, and that is the quantity of x plus 3. So whenever I take out x plus 3 from both of those, okay, I'm left with x squared plus 4 minus this whole quantity. So I'm going to put this like this, and 4x plus 1. Okay, and then we're going to simplify this part, so I'm going to distribute that negative. So I have, this is in parentheses also, I have x plus 3, and then over here, I don't have any like terms with this x squared, so I just have x squared. Then I have this negative 4x, I don't have any like terms with it, and then 4 minus 1, which gives me plus 3. Well, at this point, I'm dealing with a quadratic, but this is not one that I have to use the quadratic formula for, because I can just go ahead and factor this, okay? So I have x plus 3, that's a plus. I'm going to set up my two sets of parentheses, split up my x squared into x times x. I need something that multiplies to get 3, adds to get a negative 4. That's supposed to be a plus. Okay, so in order for me to multiply to get a positive and add to get a negative, they must both be negative, because negative times a negative gives me a positive. Okay, and 3 times 1 gets me 3. Negative 3 minus 1 gets me negative 4. So this is completely factored. Set it equal to 0 as it was. So for me to find my roots for this, all I have to do, or zeros, whatever it called it, my roots, all I have to do is set each part of those equal to 0. So x plus 3 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. So I subtract 3 from both sides. So I get x equals negative 3. Add 3 to both sides. I get x equals 3. Add 1 to both sides. I get x equals 1. So those are my real roots. Okay. On example B, this one's very similar to example A. Notice I have these two, and I have two quantities that are the same, and that's my x minus 7 in both. So I'm going to take out my x minus 7. And because these are being added, I'm not going to set up my parentheses like I did before. I'm just going to write 3x squared plus 4 plus 5x squared minus 1. I did that the other way last time because when I'm subtracting a quantity, I have to distribute it. The positive, I am still distributing it, but it's not going to change my signs. Okay, so I'm going to combine like terms in here. I have x minus 7, and then I have, oh, this is a cube, not a square. I have 3x cubed plus 5x squared. 4 minus 1 is plus 3. Okay, now we're going to do this like we did before whenever we're dealing with a cubic. We're going to graph it. Excuse me, we're going to graph it. So I want you to punch this part into your calculator, and we're looking for where it hits the x-axis. Okay, so go ahead and punch that in for me. Okay, so whenever you have that plugged in, you should see with your trace tool that x is equal to about negative 1.2 934. Okay? So, since it doesn't come out nicely, I don't really have to do anything else. My real roots are that x equals negative 1.934, and this part, when I set it equal to 0, okay, if I have x minus 7 equals 0, add 7 to both sides. So I also have that x is equal to 7. So those are my two real roots. Example 4 wants us to solve the following equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it all on one side to start with. Okay, so we'll move all of this stuff over here, basically by changing the sign, right? I'm going to subtract this from both sides, add this to both sides, add this to both sides. So I have 5x to the 4th minus 5x to the 3rd plus x to the 2nd plus 2x all equal to 0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out that x, okay, which leaves me with 5x to the 3rd minus 5x squared plus 8x plus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to graph it because we're again dealing with a cubic. Okay, so I want you to plug that whole massive thing into your calculator, all of this, it's in the parentheses, and find where it hits the x-axis. Okay, again, we're going to see it hits the x-axis at about negative 0.2149. So, we're going to use that for one of our roots. We have x is equal to negative 0.2149, and then the other one is this x, which I'm just setting x equal to 0, so is x equals 0. Okay, example 5 says the equation below can be used to find the distance from the ground at time t for a ball thrown from a height h0 and an initial speed of v0. Suppose a ball is thrown with an initial speed of v0 equals 5 and from a height of h0 equals 25. How long will it take the ball to hit the ground? Okay, so on a problem like this, we're wanting to find t is what we're looking for. It's because it's talking about how long. Okay, that's time. And when it hits the ground, what will the height be? Well, the ground is going to be at 0. So I'm talking about a height of 0 equal to negative 4.9 t squared plus my v0 was 5 t plus my h0, which is 25. Okay? So on this, I'm going to tell you that you need to use your quadratic equation, the quadratic formula, to solve this. And I'm going to have the substitute pause. I want everyone to do this at their own table. And whenever everyone's done, I want 2 people to go to the board who think that they have the right answer and know what they're doing. And then whenever they're done, we'll play the rest of the video so we can check our answer. Okay, so at this time, please pause the video. Okay, so we already said we were going to use the quadratic formula, which we know to be opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is our a, our b, and our c. So I have the opposite of b is going to be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 4.9, and c, which is 25, all over 2 times a, which is that negative 4.9. Okay, So when we simplify this, I don't have my calculator on me, so I'm going to use my cell phone. I have -5 plus or minus square root of 25 minus 4 times 4.9 times 25. Okay, a -33.9 all over. That's not right. I punched something in wrong. 4 times 4.9 times 25. That makes more sense. -400. This is 490. Okay, pretend that you can actually read that. 490 is what it is. And then I have 2 times -4.9. Oh my goodness. (9.8). Okay. Which is negative because we multiplied by a negative there. So I have double negatives here. It gives me a positive. So 490 plus 25 gives me 515. Okay, so I have -5 plus or minus radical 515 over -9.8. And from here, okay, that's what they left it at, except for they went ahead and gave the decimals for that. So if we take radical 515, we have -5 plus or minus 22 point, we'll say 694, and all over -9.8. Okay, so I have -5 plus that, okay, which is going to give me, yeah, -17.694 over -9.8, which is going to, let's see, divide by, which is roughly 1.81 seconds. And the other way would be if we subtracted it. So if I have -5 minus 22.694 gives me a -27.694 over -9.8, which is going to give me roughly a negative, nope, it's a positive. I'm just going to put it 2.83. Okay. One of those should have come out to be, oh, this shouldn't have been a negative. -5 plus 22 is going to be positive 17. This should be a negative. I apologize. I'm using my phone, so I didn't have my negative. Anyways, so I have -1.81 seconds or 2.83 seconds. Which do you think is the correct answer? I hope that you recognize that we can't have a negative time, so our correct answer there should be 2.83. Your homework today is lesson 76, A through G, and 1 through 15. You need to make sure that you show me all of your work. It will be due and graded tomorrow. Okay? I would really make sure that you're showing me your work on these, because I'm not going to be there to check it out the door like I normally am. So whenever I go through it to give you points, if you haven't shown me enough work, you will not be getting full credit. So please, please do yourself a favor and make sure that you're showing all of your work so that you earn full credit on these last few assignments. That's all I have for you, and I hope that you have a good day. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.